And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
You know, there's so many subjects I want to talk with Webster Tarpley about, very thought-provoking discussions. We're just keeping for 2 more hours. He's agreed to do that. We appreciate that. Author of Obama, the Postmodern Coup, available at Infowars.com. We're going to open the phones up in the final hour today. For the next hour, I want to get his analysis, which he really is an expert on Eastern Europe, Central Asia, the Caucasus, Russia, the Middle East, Central Asia. I want to get about 30 minutes of analysis from him on that. And then I want to, he is one of the few people, the reason I really recognized him in my own research a decade ago was he got into the eugenics, the driving force, the social Darwinism of the elite, their true propulsion system. So we'll talk with him the last 30 minutes of this hour and then open phones in the last hour. We'll take a lot of your calls coming up in about 58 minutes. But Webster, you wanted to finish up with the austerity movement, how they have the environmental movement, the austerity movement, the secret police system they're setting up, all of this massive decades-long planning coming to a head with the golden boy, literally, there to save us all and bring the left in for the final police state.
Yeah, we've talked now, I guess, about the foreign policy. In other words, this Brzezinski plan. In many world capitals, especially Moscow, especially Beijing, if you say Brzezinski plan, it's a plan, therefore, that has an end game. China reduced to warlords, 20 to 25 centers of power, as it was in the 1920s, and Russia also divided up, as it was during the Russian Civil War of 1919 to 1920, ultimately coming in with about 4 to 5 different states, different countries. So we had the Bernard Lewis plan for the Middle East, right? Carve Iraq 3 ways, Iran 6 ways, Lebanon several ways, Turkey 3 or 4 ways, Sudan at least 2 ways,
Syria.
maybe more. But then to apply that to Russia and China. So that's one thing. Now, the other side is the domestic and the austerity. When you see Obama giving this speech in Oregon, when he had his outburst there, he said, "You're not going to be able to drive an SUV, all right? You're not going to be able to eat as much as you want." This is amazing. You're not going to be able to eat as much as you want, and you can't keep your thermostat set where you want it at 72 degrees and think that the world will allow you to do this. Now,
and then in Germany, he said, called for a new world order last week, and he also, or a new international order, and he also said you're going to have to work more and serve this global system. So he told us it was really a slave master's speech.
This is what I would call killer austerity, genocidal austerity, a further cut in the U.S. standard of living of 30, 40, 50%, as much as he can
Imagine a government policy of not having a good standard of living, which has always been what the eugenicists have craved.
Absolutely. But now it's also complicated by the fact we have this worldwide financial crisis. We have the death agony of the dollar as a reserve currency. We have banking panic going on. We had Countrywide, then we had Northern Rock, we had Bear Stearns, now we've had IndyMac. We basically have banking failures every week. We've got hyperinflation, which you see in fuel, but also in food and many other areas. So you're heading towards an extreme world economic breakdown crisis, the end of the post-1945 era, as Soros himself says. So when Soros says this is what it is, what does he want? They've got to increase the looting pressure on the U.S. population to allow the bailout of J.P. Morgan Chase, the Soros interests, Goldman Sachs, and so forth. How do you do that, though? Bush and Cheney would come out and say, well, we're going to tax you for the war on terror, and that would lead to an explosion in their face. Obama will come and say, we're going to save the polar bears, we're going to save the planet, we're going to save the ice caps, we're going to have carbon tax, cap and trade on carbon. We're going to have a green tax. We're going to have a third world solidarity tax. The only problem with this is all the money goes to Rockefeller, Soros, and Goldman Sachs.
All right, Webster. When we get back, we will break this all down in detail and finish up the story you're breaking down for us and then get into what's happened in Russia. We'll be right back.
Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Webster, let's go through a detailed analysis from your perspective on what happened with the Georgian sneak attack last Thursday night into Friday morning on the eve of the Olympic Games on 8/88. The Russians moving nuclear weapons in and repulsing the Georgian/U.S. British-Israeli attack. And what do you think this means geopolitically now? In the words of Lieutenant Colonel Sam Gardner, Air Force expert on these regions and that area, that region, and these type of weapon systems. So the Russians undoubtedly brought nukes into the area, and that their stated default position is to nuke with tactical weapons any U.S. forces that attack them with precision-guided conventional munitions. And he called this the greatest military escalation in modern history since the Cuban Missile Crisis. The neocons have been running around on TV, Crystal and others, saying they want war with Russia. The New York Times called it the beginning of what could be World War III. The Russians have reportedly stopped attacking last night, but then the Georgians started shooting back at them. That's their tactic. Attack, and then when the Russians attack, scream bloody murder and say that they're being attacked. And I did hear a lady in a story yesterday talking about, did you hear about the Russians attacking Georgia in the U.S.? You have a public completely dumbed down, not knowing which end is up. I mean, how does this all play together?
Well, I have tried to argue for the past 8 or 9 months. The situation in Washington, first of all, has fundamentally changed. The neocons are out. They have no power. We'll see why they're trying to get back on TV now. But the neocons have been broken as a faction. You've got, Libby out, Rumsfeld out, Wolfowitz out at the World Bank. Lord Conrad Black, a top world neocon, is actually now in jail. You've got Ledeen under attack by the Rockefeller Committee for his activities with his old Iran-Contra network. So the thing that you're facing now, I would not call it neocon anymore. It's not the neocons. It is the Rockefeller, Brzezinski, Trilateral, Bilderberg group.
Okay, so that's who NATO and Israel are taking orders from. I'm sure you're aware that.
And that is who is running the U.S. government at this point. Bush and Cheney.
I understand that, Webster, but let me bring up this caveat. I mean, it's pretty darn neocon when you've got the military head of the Georgian military not even being Georgian, being an Israeli, and the foreign minister being an Israeli. Go ahead.
Yeah, the point of this now is that the neocons are essentially a group of stragglers and fugitives that are tending to attach themselves to the Brzezinski machine, trying to save themselves and maintain their positions and their careers in this new era. But notice, the emphasis, the epicenter of world confrontation has shifted radically out of the Middle East, out of the Persian Gulf,
into Russia,
and to the borders of Russia and also China. Because the other thing, what I was actually looking for to happen on 8/8/08 was some kind of a terror stunt at the Beijing Olympics. This could still happen, which could also then heat up the world. And I would urge people to be aware of that, and we can maybe talk about that in a minute. The kinds of things that you're seeing now are typical classic Brzezinski. Remember, Brzezinski says, you can't attack these countries yourself. If you want to destroy Venezuela, you can't attack them.
You use surrogates.
Play Colombia. You want to destroy Somalia? Stay out of there. Let Ethiopia go in. In this case, he's got a little Hitler. Saakashvili is a little Hitler. Brzezinski. This process of the color revolutions, the so-called CIA.
Let me stop you.
people.
Did you? Yeah, and we'll go back to how they financed the takeover there. But did you see the video of a plane flies overhead? And he starts cowering and crying and then running, and then they cover him up with armored vests, and he's like screaming like a little girl. I mean, I've never seen a leader act like that, an ultimate little coward, and he's wild-eyed and always lying. I mean, these people are nuts.
I would compare him in many ways to Obama, a megalomaniac drunk with power, indulging in illusions of infantile omnipotence, and really thinking he probably, I believe that Brzezinski has played him. In other words, Brzezinski has promised him.
Yeah, he told him he'd win, not that it was really meant to bring Russia in and escalate things.
And not that he was. You don't tell your expendable pawns that they are expendable pawns on a kamikaze trip. You don't tell them that. You let them go ahead and think that they're coming back.
Now, a lot of analysts are saying, and it does seem to be true, that people see McCain as a stronger military leader, and that this Georgian-Russian crisis actually strengthens McCain's hand. Why would Brzezinski do that?